Very punctual, right on the nose. Evening, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our take on question time. Unfortunately, Fiona was busy tonight, so she couldn't actually have to put up with me. For those who don't know me, I'm John Ward. I've been doing a name plaque on 2 August. I'm chair of Pakefield Community Group. And just a few little housekeeping things before we proceed. We obviously came in that door, and that's one fire exit, the other one's this one here. Toilet's right through the door in the lobby on the right hand side. And we're going to have a short break around about 8 o'clock for a cup of tea and a bun. And if you could return to your seat once you've been served, just save the hatch area getting covered up. And I was at home last night making them cakes, so enjoying them. Anyway, time to introduce the panel. Start on the far right. I've had to juggle the names of that, so I'll have to go through a list to get this tracked out. That's Madeline Farron. She's Senior Coastal Advisor South at Coastal Partnership East. Next is Sharon Lees, Resilient Coastal, is still your title? Yes, Resilient Coastal Communities and Business Manager at Coastal Partnership East. I expect you all know Peter Aldous, our MP for Pakefield. To the left, Sharon Lord, Rector of Pakefield, and also she's the chair of our Pakefield Coast Protection Group. And next to her, I expect you all know Peter as well. Peter Park, Councillor for Pakefield and Kirkley on East Suffolk County. We're going to do things a little bit different from the TV programme. Rather than sort of taking questions from the floor, I've got the questions written down, I shall read them out. I'm going to omit the names, but I will give you an indication of where that person lives, in case the location is relevant to the question. I will be sort of timing the questions, but if we do get engrossed on one particular subject, I'm fairly happy to let it go and so we can cover as much as we want. If you wish to make a comment, if you just put your hand up rather than interrupting the panel or whatever, then I'll just come to you. If you think you can't be heard, I've got mics if you need them, and just give me a shout and I'll get one to you. And if, as I say, we've got a cup of tea, if we do have time at the end of the sort of 8:30ish or whatever, we will be taking questions from the floor. That bit out of the way. And the first question is about the good old cycle path, or footpath, between Cliftonville Road and Jolly Sailors. The question is subject from someone from Cliftonville Road, and it reads: if the path between the Jolly Sailors and Cliftonville Road is designated as a footpath only, why isn't the no cycling ban being enforced? As surely the width of the path indicates that there is a nasty accident just waiting to happen. With lots of near misses and some minor collisions reported to date, can and will this be resolved? I think Pete, unfortunately, Melanie Beagle who did down the door was supposed to be here tonight. Unfortunately, had an accident yesterday and she was not unable to be with us. So we're a little bit short of council members. I'll put it across to Pete first. For your views, and then we can go a little bit further.
Thank you. The poison chalice has always with the footpath, all the cycle path. The new cycling and walking strategy has been recently published, which is a great document, and it shows that the footpath between Arbor Lane and the church, in fact beyond, is a footpath. Cyclists should get off and push their cycles. in another world.
No, I have that in.
I'll try and catch up a bit, Eric, anyway. And Eric and I have had conversations about this. It's been a long-term issue. And the problem is, the section by the caravan park is fine in terms of width. And if people are on cycles there, pedestrians can get out of the way. But you go across along by where Dean's Beans is, sorry for the advertising, but we have to, and further on down towards the Jolly Sailors, it's impossible to widen that area because, well, unless you rebuild the cliff to do that. So we're talking about enforcement. Yes, it can be enforced, but in this world, unless you have a police officer there ready to hand out tickets to people breaking the law in terms of cycling on a footpath, it's an almost impossibility. It's all about good manners and a shared piece of that. The problem is, of course, we know that people will cycle on there. You can't stop them. If it's night time and there's no one else about, I must admit, in the past, I have done it. You know, I'm the first one to hold my hand up. But I certainly wouldn't cycle along there when there's pedestrians about. So it's a very tricky issue. We haven't got the resources, so there are no resources to enforce it. But it is possible that a blitz could be done. You could have some police officers down there and issue tickets if they wished, and you could put the message around and issue a few serious fines. So whether that might have to be the end result, it would have to be considered, but I would still want to err on the side of people being sensible with each other.
Can I just quickly come in? Melanie did give me, this is the county council now, she did give me an update by email for this evening, and what she has done, and I think she's asked the Suffolk County Council, I think the word was ordered, so I assume it's in the pipeline, that on the path you do paint at various points along it, no cycling.
Very simply, why can't you have those bars where you can't get a cycle through? The bar that comes up and across that way, and the other one comes up and across that way, you can't get a cycle through. It's as simple as that.
You then restrict the mobility scooters and etc. That's the only problem. And children buggies and there was another question which came actually from Saxon Road. Is it possible to widen the section between Saxon Road and Cliftonville Road to allow cycle lane, and then clearly indicate to cyclists to dismount in the between the church really and Old Saints Road. I know Melanie and I were discussing, and we discussed it a little bit earlier, but I did have a discussion with Melanie going back quite a few years, that there is the scope to widen the bit from the church towards the Old Fences, but the biggest obstacle is the bit by the church.
But then if you're on a mobility scooter, surely you can go around the odds and over the other side. If you're on a mobility scooter, you can go down the odds alleyway and out and round the other side, and then come out near the church. So if you put one of those cycle things in the middle, then it's easy.
I know we looked into the process, and the church was even approached to acquire a bit of land off the church for the fences to widen that bit by the church. And there was even talk of a sort of boardwalk affair, because it's a low cliff, to allow for the pedestrians to walk on that bit and then to cycle. But it did dwindle away. The finance seems to be the biggest. But I will be talking to Melanie as soon as she's better. If we can perhaps get a work party together to clear that path and the council tarmac or whatever, sort of a compromise on that. I think that may work. I don't. You'd have to approach the Suffolk County Council to see if they agree with that. But the difficult bit is the bit by the church. Cyclists still get off now. So Yes, and that
Because
bit,
they come down the dip
Yeah.
and speed off the other side.
yeah, that, you know, but as I said, when Melanie recovers, I will be in touch, and I can put it on our page, on the Facebook page.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, don't pound that as well.
There weren't notices put up by Suffolk County Council a while ago. The site was just taken down.
Yeah.
Can not something more permanent be put up?
We were looking at, talking about what they've done on the seafront with the, on the tarmac, has done like the white lining colours and whatever. And obviously that's cost effective, and I think we can talk the council into doing that and then work to a
Because when you speak to anybody who's cycling there, saying there's no cycling, you get rather a rude.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I think the signs have been put up 3 times now in as many years and taken down or turned around or graffitied or whatever. And unfortunately, that's what we're up against. We had the same problem with litter and whatever, during COVID and whatever. We've done our bit, put them signs up and this, that, and thankfully that curbed that problem. Whether
Stingers.
the
Yeah. Well, buggies are solid group. Stingers.
Yeah, but can I just clarify something, please? Because with the right understanding, I've been at this for something like 15 plus years. I'm 15 years old and I wouldn't want to walk on the footpath because I'm not safe there. I am forced to go on the beach. I can't use the footpath because I'm going to end up on the floor. Right? I just said that. Let me clarify. It is a public footpath number 27 that goes from Arbour Lane and ceases at the car park in All Saints Road. Any reference to All Saints Road to the Jolly Sailors is irrelevant because that land is not part of the public footpath. So All Saints Road to the Jolly Sailors should be included because in all fairness it is not of an adequate width even on there to make a dual function, which if you take a dual function should be a minimum of 2.4 metres, allowing 1.2 metres for pedestrians and 1.2 metres for cyclists. So that clarifies where the footpath starts and ends, and anything beyond All Saints Road subject to negotiation. It is the legal responsibility of Suffolk County Council to enforce the regulations. They have a highways department. With regard to the signs on the seafront, they are laminated material which has been heat welded to the tarmac underneath. They are pre-cleaned, and I think Suffolk County Council would be well advised to talk to East Suffolk Council with regard to the possibility of being able to use that type of sign.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I think that the piece between the church and the Old Fellows is narrow anyway. I know there's regulation 1.3 metres, I suppose, or 2.3 metres. I don't think it is in places, but sometimes it's hard for pedestrians to pass on that bit.
I would also add that it's an absolute no-no because the footpath from one side of the church wall to the other side of the church wall is hallowed ground.
Yeah.
And you in actual fact were not there in 1953 and picking up bones off the beach as I was, because the churchyard used to go a lot further that way. You will not get permission to do
Yes,
that.
well, I will disagree with that because that edge of because of the way that the churchyard is, the edge of that, there's about that much that we could go backwards. About a foot. It's about a foot. Not exactly, but we could go back a foot and have a new boundary wall. The bit that's underneath the footpath is consecrated ground anyway, and the bit going down the path is consecrated ground, which we discovered when the guys were doing the cables off the beach and suddenly wanted to go under my footpath. So that was obviously an issue. So there's no that little bit of ground has got no down from the top of the grass to the edge of the path. There's no bodies or bones in that little bit because it's too high. And everything is at least 3 foot or deeper in that section. So it wouldn't be a problem going back by a foot.
So I hope that clarification has helped in some way
Yeah,
with the
thank you.
description.
Yeah.
If you extend the line of the wall in Saxon Road towards the sea, and the road that comes from Seaview Walk, the wall, and meet at a corner, you'll find that corner is down the cliff. So the path comes later in the pre-existing church,
Yeah.
which was lost in the 30s. So as a right of way, the footpath was moved from where it may have been originally. I cycle, never on the footpath, it's not allowed, but most cyclists on the footpath do slow down for pedestrian most.
They do.
And since those blue notes have been on an upper prom cottage space, only a few people cycle on there. And as I said, when you challenge, they either ignore you or say something else. But there's no enforcement.
No.
But what do you do? Some of them are quite
Education.
and some are so good. But as the children, actually, the teenagers, when I said, look, just walk.
How many pavements can you go on in Lowestoft that doesn't have cyclists?
Yeah, and Pakefield Street. And the children are really polite. And I'm not going to be sexist here. It's usually middle-aged men in their local stuff with their nuts up there in their throat who just think this is their right way to do what they like. It's not the elderly and it's not the youngsters. It's these arrogant ones with all their get-up who just thinks, oh, I've got the right. Personally, I've got a stick tennis racket now and I'm just threatening to put it to his face.
Right, moving swiftly on. As I said, I'll give that all with the Suffolk County Council and see what we come up with.
Can I just say one more thing? Most of that pathway was rebuilt because of the 1973 flood. And that's what I want to disappear. And so they have rebuilt it all once. And perhaps that could be rebuilt again. Because near the slope, if you look carefully, are all the concrete sandbags they put up there.
Can I just add in there one thing though? We are, East Suffolk councillors, trying to encourage people to actually get out of their cars and get on the bikes. So maybe it's something we could take back and suggest that maybe extend the path, have a discussion with the county council. But it would have to be wide enough to make sure there were no accidents, but you're quite right, it was extended. But, you know, it's a bit of a problem. We want people having a healthy lifestyle, so we want cyclists and pedestrians to share the pathways. If
But
they
they've
can.
got the problem, and then you've got insurance problems.
Can I be allowed?
Just a quick minute.
We have a situation where it is possible to cycle from the centre of Stock industrial estate right the way through to the middle of the town without travelling on a public footpath or on a road. I cycle, I drive, I walk. I do not ride on the promenade or the cliff top, and I can find my way around. What we need is education of people. We need maps that are printed correctly and not incorrectly, as was done with regard to Harbour Lane to Cliftonville Road. They illegally produced a map. Somebody did, defining it as a cycle track. Well, I'm sorry, that has now been superseded. So we have a situation now. Adequate cycle routes, they just need proper signposting and education of the people.
Agreed. Yeah. Agreed. I like that one.
Next question is on sort of sea defence, really. Our poor old cliff at Pakefield. This was submitted by somebody from the Avenue. Following the public consultation, I think it's what we had back in 2022, which option, if any, has been chosen to protect our cliff at Pakefield. For those who are not aware, we did have a public meeting or whatever here, and with a display of the water and the running the other way, and you offered to give your opinion of which one of the options was preferred, etc., etc. I can hand that over to you, Sharon, please.
So, John's quite right. We had a public consultation. The purpose of that is when you start to look at a frontage, you've got to review what options are possible. So you start with a long list of options, and that consultation happened some time ago. So we've had 2 consultations within Pakefield. So the long list of options shortened it down to, I think it was either 5 or 6 options that were practical and possible given this particular frontage. And it was then, as a result of the final public consultation, the preferred option from those that took part locally was that we had some sort of rock, either revetment or berm or something like that, on the frontage. That also tallied with those statutory bodies that we have to get consent from. So even though an option might be chosen, we still need to get consent from people like the Environment Agency, from the Marine Management Organisation, and from Natural England. And because of the type of frontage you've got, and the fact that you've got a nice moving dam that will arrive here and bring a nice healthy beach with it, those statutory consultees also agreed that actually something that was a natural defence, so like rock, which is a good natural defence, would work better here. Okay, so that's probably
Yes.
that's okay.
Questions from the floor?
Is it going well?
Pardon?
Is it going? Is it doing what? Is it
Okay, so that's all right.
Is it
I'll take that in 2 parts. If you like.
Is it doing? I've been here for that, but
No, that's
also
okay.
watched him arrive, and is it yeah, is it
I
working? That's
can
what
do
it
that,
is.
John.
Yeah, well, if I can move on to the next question, that's right. Somebody's asked, why can't the width of the rocks on Pakefield Beach be reduced to allow me, well, this is the question, to allow me to walk past with my dog at high tide? They don't seem to be working anyway.
Okay, so there's lots there's lots to unpack there. So we'll start with the width. That's probably the best way to start. So when we design something, and with an emergency piece of work, which is this was, it's not a fully designed thing as you would have with a permanent rock fence. It still has a design, and we have to look at stability. It's stability to ensure that it does as good a job as we can make it do, but also that it doesn't topple over and hurt somebody and injure someone. So it is a short length. It's as much rock as we could buy with the money we got. So the amount of money that cost in its totality was 1.2 million, just pennies underneath it. We had hoped to buy more rock, but I'll share with you, and this is completely true. Since 2018, the price of rock has gone up 340%. It is an expensive item. Ground rock is an expensive item to buy on the coast, but it's a good item. It can move if it's displaced. So the reason you can't make it narrower is because it's stable as it is. And there are really good signs up either end of it that even show the timetables and time times, because we want people to be safe when we're walking along the coast. The unfortunate thing is that we have got one of the fastest eroding coastlines in northwestern Europe. It's eroding right along our coast, and from 2018 onwards we've seen some significant changes right along the Norfolk and Suffolk coast. So there are places, not here for example, but because I walk this bit of coast, but I used to regularly walk and ride the bit of coast at Thorpe Nest, and where I used to walk and ride at high tide, I can't do that anymore because it is eroding quite a lot. So we'd love people to be able to walk the whole of the coast all of the time, but it's not practical and possible to do so. We've got to be able to put in designs that will work and do the job that they're supposed to do.
Only one question.
Yeah?
When the groins worked so well for so many years, why didn't you all think about replacing those?
Different solutions work at different times. So groins capture material, okay? But they also stop the material moving. So when I talk about material, I mean beach material. So sometimes it works well and you can use a groin and use it effectively. Sometimes it doesn't because it stops that replenishing beach elsewhere. We looked at groins as an option. They are a slightly cheaper option, but what would happen is other places along that Pakefield coast would suffer from having those groins in place. So groins work in places, rock works in places. There are so many different options that you can use, and you have to choose the one that works best for what's happening on the coast at the time, and what you can get permission for. And you know, we're subject. It's often thought that as a we're part of the Suffolk Council that you can just go ahead and do what you like. You can't. We're subject to permissions from other statutory authorities, just like anybody else that's putting stuff in the coast. So we have to get permission from people like Natural England. I mean, Clive knows what we had to do to put that rock in place. And we have to get permission from people like the MMO and the Environment Agency. So we have to use a material that is agreed by a lot of people.
Do you think it's working?
The rock is doing a good job, but you've got to bear in mind that it was an emergency intervention. It's a short piece of rock. It's doing the job it was supposed to do, which is to protect the access road that it was nibbling away at. There's one road in and there's one road out, and that is what we needed to most put that effort into at the time. We'd have loved to have gone further, but we had to choose the part that was most vulnerable.
Who pays for all this then? Is this...
Well, that piece, the 1.2 million, that was funded in two different ways. So 700,000 of that came from East Suffolk Council's emergency capital fund, so we wiped that one out. 500,000 of that came from a government initiative, so we're Coastal Partnership used to managing a project called Resilient Coasts. That's an £8.4 million project that covers the whole of the...
Do the caravan parks not participate in private? There's got to be a lot more people.
Well, private landowners can contribute, but that bit of frontage, the critical thing is that access road. And that's not part of the caravan park's frontages.
But what's that access to the room?
People's properties, basically. I mean, Clive and others.
To property,
yeah.
Because I just thought that is the caravan.
No.
That's why I thought, why can't they?
When we put the rocks, well, it wasn't just Clive's property, it was a lot of properties along there. It's keeping a lot of people awake at night. And I've sat in front rooms when people have told me that. So, but yes, it was to help with those properties. So £500,000 came from the Resilient Coast budget as part of more of a sort of innovative approach on the coast and how we could look at using rock for sort of shorter term defences before we move to a different type of fence.
But as for people complaining that they can't get past, because I've seen it on there, because the tide is high, like from Kesselman they can't get through. I mean, they can get in and out of the tide up, and I mean, surely everyone's got a mobile phone, they could use their phone and see if they want to go with Jollies or the pub and see when the tide's out, wouldn't you?
Well, Natural England, I think it was was last year.
I think you've even got a sign up there.
We have, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Natural England, I think it was last year, launched Eagles Coast Path, which is sort of a huge map or approach for where people can walk the coastal path. That's had to change significantly, even since last year. But there are other routes inwards that people can walk and still enjoy the coast.
When you do that new caravan bit though, surely there'll be new caravan bits coming. Surely there'll be a pathway.
I don't know.
So they don't have to walk past the rocks. They can come like from McDonald's. Surely it's going to be
Yeah, they can dream McDonald's, then they can go around that.
Yeah, sort of sad. They come round.
Yeah, there is round ways.
Come round and then go down up the lane.
Yeah.
But I can understand people wanting, we've got a beautiful coastline, why would you want to leave it? I can understand why people want to walk there, but it's about keeping yourself personally safe. I mean, we had, I don't know if anybody in the room remembers, but in 2017 we had a death on the coast at Thorpeness, where a very large piece of, they have a different problem to what to the cliff that you've got. The cliffs in Thorpeness overhang rather than the road that way. And there was a chap, and unfortunately wife and dog walked that part of the cliff in 2017 and a piece fell off. So, you know, we've all got personal responsibility to make sure we keep ourselves safe and keep our children safe. So we stop them digging into cliffs. We've seen that in Pakefield. But we also remain safe and walk safely at high times. So I think there is a large proportion of common sense and personal safety needed, but you know, I can understand why you might want to.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that the erosion there is not just the action of the sea, it's because it's sandstone and it's rainwater falling on the field of Bath, which makes it heavy, so it slips down. So it isn't just the action of the sea.
No.
But the other point I'd like to just raise is there is a spit from Kessington that's slowly moving north, and actually at low tide now you can see the sandbank all the way along. It's creating a little lagoon. I'm just concerned that by putting rocks down you're actually going to impede the progress of that sand. I mean, has that been looked at? Because when you do something very simple, it has an impact somewhere else.
Well, I'm going to get Maddie to answer that because she's our technical expert, but yes, we do have to consider all of those things. So, can you just thank you?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Red Acre Ness has been travelling northwards at sort of 80 metres a year in the last sort of 10 years. And we've done lots of studies of it, and we've got all of the sort of the bathymetric data from the nearshore sandbanks that are joining up to that. And that kind of is one of the reasons why that linear rock revetment was the preferred option and not buoys, as was discussed earlier, because that linear rock revetment, which is right up to the toe of the cliff, is then not impeding any sediment like travelling north to south or south to north. And that's what natural movements were preferred as well, because if there was things going out of that particular field, it would then change the dynamics of the sediment movement.
Have you done a geological survey?
Sorry.
Because where Pontins, where it's kind of lost a lot of cliff, you know, sort of 8-10 years ago, it's now all the beautiful white beach, it's all vegetated.
I mean, that's got to be lovely with the lagoon, and that's got to offer obviously all protection for all of this at the end of the day.
I know it's difficult to predict the action of the sea. I think there are so many factors that influence it. But do you know how long it will be if this bit does move up to Pakefield? How long it will be? Because it would appear that it's already happening. You know, there's already, the sandbanks, I've already said, is increasing.
Yeah. It is very difficult too. So we have got a current prediction of a slow rate and a fast rate. The fast rate is approximately 15 years, and the slow rate is maybe 30. But also, with all of the modelling that you could do, which is kind of very expensive as well, that might not still give you the exact answer, because where it meets with the nearshore banks and the offshore banks, that dynamic could change without us, we couldn't predict that, and if that dynamic changes, that might change the rate of what Benedict is doing.
Can I just say one thing? You put a load of blocks down near last on South Pier some years back with the design to actually keep a beach there, which is failed to do. I mean, there is a beach there, but not as I remember it when I was a kid, where you had children's corner that went out miles. But the thing is, it's now buried almost up to the base of the Claremont Pier. I mean, you can't walk under the Claremont Pier anymore, thanks to that area being blocked. So, do you not think, or whoever did the research, would think, hang on, it's not worked completely as we wanted it to here. Instead, it's being put up Pakefield, where it's now eroded either side of those concrete blocks badly. Did no one ever do any research and think, well, didn't do such a good job? I mean, it won't be 10 years before the Claremont area is actually buried under sand. And if you've been down there, you'll see what I'm talking about. So it didn't work in one area, but why didn't anybody actually look at that first and think, didn't do a very good job there, perhaps we should have spread them out further, or made more blocks, or not put them there at all. That seems a very strange way to go about spending £18 million worth of concrete, and it's not working in one area, but you expect it to work up here. And I don't understand the theory behind that at all.
Have you had a geological survey?
Can I?
Yes, I've been waiting a long time.
So, sorry, I was just...
Put this way sometimes.
So, 2015, I think that was finished.
No, that was done 20 years ago.
That was 20 years ago.
I'm
a bit further.
And that was an
I've gone too
absolute
further south.
mock.
Okay, that's fine.
And that robbed the beach. Then you put £1 million worth of stones on that got robbed by the sea. It doesn't work down that end. It's just on the beach. You can't walk under the Claremont Pier. We've been here all our lives, born and brought up here, and that was a muck up, and you've mucked up.
If I could just cut in just quickly.
No,
I believe, well, they are two different scenarios.
They're not. They're not. You had one wall, one sea bridge over the wall into Lowestoft, which no one knew that all the drains had collapsed near the cinema and all under the lights and not these, and they blamed it on the houses getting flooded behind the cinema, which when I lived here all that time ago, and then so you suddenly decided to put all these blocks around that corner.
I think we're digressing.
No, and they blamed on the sea. They blamed on the sea coming over, and it wasn't that. The drains had all collapsed near not least in the cinema, which is why the houses got flooded at the back. It wasn't that freeway, and they put all those rocks there, and you've done exactly the same here. And what my husband's trying to say is, it's a monumental mess up. You spent 1.2 million, it's corroded this side, in the short time we've been back, and it's corroded the other side. So what's the answer? How are you now going to fix that?
Right, so can I take the two things separately? Because they are separate. One is cliff erosion, one is beach erosion. They're very different things.
That won't be true. So they've done that all because of a one freak wave came over the wall.
We had a time surge in 2017.
Yeah.
What you're talking about?
Yeah, but all the drains, I lived in.
What I didn't put that defence in place, so I can't answer that question. I do know that the defence was put in place because of 2013 and how that will now tie in to the bigger schemes being built in Lowestoft because we don't have to raise defences there. So there are studies for that and evidence to back that. But I'm happy to take that away and talk to the engineer and put that in place, because she's our operations and engineering manager. The cliff erosion, if you put any defence in place, and it doesn't matter the length of defence, it could be 100 metres, it could be 1500 metres. Either side of that is likely to be impacted. The critical thing for the people who live behind those rocks, and as I say, I've sat in their front rooms and I've listened to one particular lady who didn't sleep for a long time. The critical thing for people behind those rocks that are in front of those cliffs is they've now got a little bit of peace of mind because they know they can access their properties.
If they hadn't put a load of rocks back inside the place,
It would make no difference. Yes, the rocks that they use, I'm afraid. We're going to have to
agree this will.
Can I just say something that's not emotional? I know an earth scientist, geologist. He spent 2 years studying this area. His theory is because we've got chalk and clay and sand on top, what happens is in the open areas like the fields, like where the caravans are, not in the towns, because of the drainage. Most of it comes from the rain, which moves from, say, the A12 towards Goodensloot, towards the sea. And what happens is every now and again, particularly heavy rains and stuff, that shifts the sand forward. Can't go through the clay, can't go through the chalk. Collapses the cliffs, sea comes along, takes it away. Because if you look carefully when you go up there, a lot of the sea never reaches the cliffs.
Yeah. That we do have, and Maddie and I, again, had to sort of go and talk to caravan businesses up in Portland, for example. So the problem you're talking about is sort of something that is wider than Pakefield. I think the lady at the back...
Yes, I know, but what I'm saying is the most sensible thing to be, for me, from my point of view, like you've got where the Coolby caravan site is, that one step back.
Yeah.
Why can't you step back to the other caravan? Because you've done it before.
Yeah, yeah.
And that be safer.
It is.
Because you know very well that it's not about the edge of the cliff, because you'd be 12 foot back, and if you aren't careful with the grass being long, you can't see the crack. And that's the next part to go.
Yeah. No, you're quite right. There's a combination, and I didn't catch his name, sorry. But there's a combination of that your friend is quite right. There is a combination of erosion at the base, because in some places it does reach the base of the cliff. Not other places, you're quite right about that too. So there's a combination of, we've got a bit of a drainage issue and a bit of erosion at the tops of the cliffs, and we've got the sea reaching it at the bottom. It's probably the drainage issue is probably a little bit more prevalent in Corton, would that be right to say?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like geology, like the geology of Suffolk is, you know, is
no, I'm not talking about Suffolk, I'm talking about that particular place.
Yeah.
What I don't understand is why you spend all this money on something you're not going to win. You don't win it anywhere else.
No.
So what is the money spent for?
You can't win against the sea, you're quite right, but what you can
So
do
why
is...
spend the money?
Because you can buy time for adaptation.
Why not move the caravans back?
Because you can buy time for adaptation.
That's not safe.
The caravans themselves, the caravan park, for example, they do have a very strong adaptation policy. So they have been...
But the council has forced them to move back in the past, and there was a footpath along there.
I can't comment on that, I'm afraid.
Oh, no, I know you can't, because that's not been looked at.
But I can say that the...
But I fear for people even in the caravans, because they're not in a safe place.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
They've had planning permission now, haven't they, to move those, the ones that are on the front row.
They're going to have to move anyway, because they're not safe.
No.
And I only say that because I was born here, I still live here, so I have a long history of knowing the area.
Again, this comes back to clarification. There are people who do not understand what's going on. The coastal management plan for protecting the town ceases at the end of the sea wall. Full stop. Anything happens, keep the sea out at all costs. Between the end of the sea wall and what used to be Mr. Minnie's property on the cliff tops at the end of the caravan park, the Rosary, I'm sorry, I was lost for the name of the property. That is what's known as managed retreat. We are under a situation of managed retreat to try and prevent the sea from eating Pakefield. Beyond that point in a southerly direction, and I have put forward 3 proposals to protect the cliff, to stop the cliff from being eroded in order to protect that. The caravan park has lost 28 pitches, and it's going to lose even more. And to be quite honest, the way I see it, the public footpath around Avon will be coming down the side of the A12 ultimately because anything south of the rocks is likely to go. Now, it might sound a bit hard, but I'm trying to explain it in layperson's terms. I know why that piece of land is building up, and it isn't because of the tide taking the stuff that way. It's building up from this way. Even when there's a flood tide, an ebb tide going north, our beach is going that way and building up the backside of it, and that's why it's coming this way so fast. Our beach, 6 to 8 weeks ago, dropped somewhere in the region of about a metre overnight. I can't calculate that in terms of tens of thousands or even 500,000 tonnes of sand disappearing off the surface of the beach. The whole beach dropped. And it was literally overnight. So, okay, what I'm saying is, I put forward propositions, and the real problem started in 2013 when we lost the middle beach. Why have we got a problem? The middle beach got eroded. And a certain dog I had, a certain German Shepherd at that point in time, went for a walk with me, and as I walked along the beach, the erosion taking place in the middle beach was there. And I was there on the tidal beach. And at this point on me, every 6 feet, for as far as the eye could see, were the World War II defences, which were still there in the form of rusty poles.
Yeah, I was going
Now
to say
that
the same
held
thing.
that lot together. Once we'd lost the middle beach, the sea got to the base of the cliff, then the cliff started falling. You will not stop the erosion, and the problem we have is that we should be protecting the toe of the cliff south of where the rocks are. But the management plan says no active intervention.
The beach is levelling off, and the stone now moved, like Eric said, to the 1940 level, more time level. That's why it's been all exposed in the barbed wire and exposed to so that's what they use as a defence. And even that's getting dangerous because of the
Can we move on? Because we have eaten into this question goes on to, I don't know if Madam explain the makings of it. As following the McDonald appraisal and the shoreline management plan policy review, can it be confirmed that action is or has been taken to change the SMP, which is a shoreline management plan policy, LOW 4.3. This change is critical for the local community to then have the support from local businesses or local business partners to work in partnership on the long-term rock defences. So we're sort of covering the bits we have done.
Well, that's okay. So the particular policy that policy unit that's being talked about is the bit that is south of where the Rosewood was, around sort of past the caravan park and into Pontins and just slightly beyond. That is a no active intervention policy. No active intervention sometimes has footnotes with it. So there is an area of that policy where it allows for what's called local intervention. So the policy, there is no justification for changing that policy based upon what we know and the studies we've done. However, that doesn't prevent Pakefield Caravan Park from doing what's called local intervention. We have spoken, we met with Pakefield Caravan Park with Matt Purden, who is the operations director, but also James, who looks after all of their assets. We met them with our planning team, We also subsequently spoke to Natural England, and a short-term rock solution there. We had some very positive nods from the right people on. It's up to Pakefield Caravan Park, because this is, there is no government funding for that part of the frontage at all. So it's up to Pakefield Caravan Park to come forward with a proposal for that. There is nothing preventing them from doing that. Matt and James know that. I think they've probably, if we're being kind and honest to them, they've probably been a little bit preoccupied with their other planning application, getting that through, to be fair. But we've had conversations with them. They know the current situation. There isn't a need to change the SNP policy to do that. However, there is something that Madeline, myself and our coastal manager are looking at, which is the need for clarification on how far that local intervention affects in terms of the work that can be done, because it is really only the stretch that relates to Pakefield Caravan Park. So it's just clarifying that, so in planning terms it's a little bit simpler to follow. But there's nothing preventing Pakefield Caravan Park from putting through that proposal, and they're aware of that. We've had those conversations with them.
Does it affect drainage or anything, or more caravans? Is it, how does all that work?
I don't know in terms of their drainage, I'll be honest with you. But when they put a planning application in, they would have to include design and mitigation and all sorts.
Yeah.
They'd have to go through the
So drainage and everything, because obviously that's very valuable, isn't it?
So they would have to go through that whole planning process that everyone has to go through to build it.
Our drains and our sewage system can't cope now, and that's all going to court.
Well, that
so since we're having sewage dumped in the sea,
Can we stick to the what everyone's at?
So yeah, they would need to go through the planning application, but we've spoken to one of the main consenting parties, and they were reasonably comfortable with, again, natural intervention rather than force, etc. They seem to feel rock was okay. So there's nothing to prevent that. That's down to Pakefield Caravan Park should they want to go ahead.
John, can I just chip in there?
Yes, of course you can.
Thank you, and I know the area very well. Just to reassure everybody that when the planning consent was given for the for the caravan park, there were 41 conditions, and they are quite serious conditions. And just to reassure Samantha that no sewage, no raw sewage is being pumped into the sea from the caravan park, from Lurton. The problem with the sewage that's been on the beach has been overflow from the Waveney and the sources upriver of farmland. But it's still something we need to consider. What I would say is this, having had a conversation with Matt Bird and myself a couple of weeks ago, there is a willingness from the park owners to consider that, to put in some managing, to look at the road situation. And this is not a criticism, generally speaking, but that £1 million, it would have been nice to have 2 or 3 or 4. We know, we've got to be realistic, it isn't in the purse. But what I wonder, I can't remember the exact figure, but I've spent a lot of time listening to Sharon and Madeline on this and being on the group. If that rock had not gone in to protect the cliff top, then at Arbor Lane there'd have been a lot more gone. Eric says quite, I noticed it just going over a weekend, seeing a metre go. But the main thing is though, if that rock wasn't there, can you just remind us of what the erosion line is, or would be, if we hadn't done any intervention at all? Because I looked at it and it was coming pretty close to my father-in-law's house at the end of Arbor Lane.
We would have need to have brought with us an image of something. I don't know if you've got it.
Well, I've brought a few of the things that we had.
I know you spend a lot of time explaining to the public, and they should know from the leaflets we put out there about the line, how far down, how after 10, 15, 20 years, what's being done is, and I certainly take the point that Mike said about, is it worth investing? If we didn't do something, what do? Do we let this bit of Pakefield just go? Now, I don't think if it's just money, and I'm sorry being cynical there, and it's just money to save the properties that all being saved, it was a shame we lost the Rosary before those rocks went in. Been very much involved with the caravan camp, and they have already got their managed plan, and that's one of the main criteria for looking at why they needed to relocate. It's a key business for Pakefield, you know, and it's something, it brings tourism in. It's something that I want to see happening, but also, conversely, I also want to make sure we, councillors, our team, Louise is here from the Pakefield team this evening, want to make sure that whatever is done with that caravan camp extension, I know I'm going off track here slightly, but the mitigation is looked at, and more, I've asked to meet with Matt Bird and residents to talk about more mitigation, and that means looking at the drainage of the land behind to make sure that everything is in place. Those 41 conditions, you know, they have got to be checked and make sure it works. So, you know, good work on the planners, took it very seriously. Great work. I've seen what Sharon's team has done over the past few years. And don't forget, East Suffolk Council has ownership of the whole coast of Suffolk. And they extend their responsibility to Norfolk. I washed my mouth, no, I shouldn't be saying. And also talk to some people in Essex.
But where are where is the drainage going?
The drainage, sorry, you drains the caravan into the main drains, into the system.
The thing is, you've got another food problem coming, because there is a clay pit lots of Montology.
Yes.
Full of chemicals, rubbish. Nobody really knows what went in there. It was all purple colour and everything else, right? And the local doctors were very concerned at the time, because lots of people in the caravan, in the holiday camp, were becoming ill. Because what's happening is that is gradually moving underneath the holiday camp towards the beach. And come out somewhere like Crazy Mary's ravine.
Sorry, can I ask a question of you, Peter? I mean, it's the local authority is desperately struggling to protect the community. I mean, it's you know, the local authority is at a disadvantage because we have a coastline, an eroding coastline. What help comes from central government to help the local authority? Because I can remember reading an article some time ago which said governments would invest in sea defences the same amount of money for the value of property that those sea defences are saving. Now, is that currently the situation? I mean, the policy may have changed, I don't know. But also, what grants are available from central government? Because what we can afford here is peanuts.
Well, let's just answer that. Even though I'm the MP for a very relatively small part of the Suffolk coast, there are an awful lot of challenges on this coastline, whether it's at Corton we've heard, whether it's at Lowestoft, where we've got the scheme going on at the moment, whether it's here, whether it's at Kessingland. My approach is that I liaise and keep in touch with those communities, and I attend the meetings which we have here. I think we've got another one on Monday morning, and obviously liaise, work very closely with Coastal Partnership East, who work up, who have got a lot of expertise, which, and it's right that they pull the sources with Norfolk as well. They work up a scheme that, in consultation, as we're hearing this evening, there are quite a lot of different views as to what schemes should be put forward for particular areas. And they work up the schemes, and then when they have an approved scheme, I will assist and support in getting funding from government to do those schemes. That funding comes from a whole variety of different sources in government, whether it's through the Environment Agency at DEFRA, whether it's through the Living Up Department, you might be getting through the Business Department or whatever. And so there is a lot of money being spent on coastal defences in this area. We have two problems. Firstly, it's an ever accelerating problem, and as someone has said this evening, that in this battle with man against the sea. Ultimately, there is only one winner. Secondly, as Sharon has mentioned, there is, and it's happened since 2018, there is dramatic increase, inflation in the cost of the materials, in carrying out these projects, which is something that we're having to contend with.
But you said you were having a meeting here Monday morning. Do you actually ask the people who know? Do you actually ask that gentleman, and probably several hundred others in this area their opinion? Or do you just all go home, tap it in the computer and come up with your ideas?
Well,
because they seem extremely knowledgeable.
Well,
and I can't believe that both their opinions
I do.
and the lady on the man on
Sharon
the top
Sharon shares.
you cannot just go away and tap it in at CLAS and come up with what you think. Have you actually, you're having a meeting here, why don't you ask the locals and then get
The majority of people who sit in on those meetings are locals, and it will be...
So you'll be here Monday morning then?
No, I'm not, because I'm never invited.
So anybody can join the meeting. It's anybody who's local can join the meeting. We've had several public meetings in here where we ask people to sign up onto the distribution list, onto the email list, and our secretary sends out invitations to lots of people. The majority of people don't actually attend, to be perfectly honest. Lots of people are invited, but we don't always get all those people attending, which is a bit sad. But it's a public meeting. We've had so many people. When we've had we had consultations in here where we were getting people to sign up. And not very many people signed up, unfortunately.
Signed up for what?
Signed up to be part of the steering group. And we've had that. How many? I think we've had that 3 times a year. We've had three of those, and they were well advertised in the local press, on Facebook, and
as well. Every property within a certain distance of the cliff was leafleted twice with the details of these meetings.
Absolutely. So, and I know that Sue, our secretary, invites a lot of people, but like I said, most do not.
I don't think over the years that the council, the government, or anyone has listened to the general opinion of the people that live locally.
In what way?
Tapping in a computer and coming up with what you think, but apart from going out and doing a consensus, they're not supposed to come to you, you're supposed to go to them. You should go to them, you should be out there asking all the people from North Lowestoft down and knocking on their door and asking them their opinion, because there's a lot of wisdom out in here, in this room, and it's been completely ignored.
I would disagree with that, actually. Sorry. There'll be public meetings held here. This is a Pakefield issue. People are invited to come, residents. But the other side of it is, that's why we have the democratic process where you elect your councillors and we go out and we talk to people. We regularly talk to people in the community here. I do, Louise does, Malcolm Peters lives in Kirkley. He's a Pakefield councillor.
We've been here 18 months and we haven't seen it.
The leaflets that went out to a significant number of residents to say, right, the Pakefield Coast Protection Group welcomes anybody's views. We had several meetings here, and I think, if invitations need to come out to others from this evening, I see no reason why they shouldn't be. But the point is, yes, it's important to have opinions, but it's also important to have opinions based on fact. Now, the facts that we get from the engineers, they are people who do this professionally, it's their bread and butter, but it doesn't mean we don't need to listen to other people's views. That's what it's all about. But we don't go into those meetings. Monday morning will not be us thinking, all right, this is it, tap, 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 we're ignoring you. That's the whole point. The majority of people at that meeting on Monday will be local residents. They will be.
A couple of years ago, we had officials from the government, everyone came in here, and it would be wonderful, and all these diagrams. They were going to have Dutch engineers come from up near Mumsley with the gas turbines. Come here and talk about building big dunes and all that kind of stuff, right? So that was accepted, and everyone went away. The next year, came back. The first year, I think they had about 6 options or something, right? Drawings and everything else. Next year they came back. I attended all of them, right? What was the discussion? Oh, we can't do that anymore. We can't afford it. What they come up with? Put the drawings back in again. So where are we?
I'm going to repeat that a little bit because I'm going to refer you back to where the first question, which was what was the preferred option chosen, and we said then it was rock. We did look at sandscaping, which is what was done at Bacton, and that was looked at by the Crown Estates and Royal Haskonian because it's a very specialist area. Royal Haskonian piloted sandscaping over in Holland, and the first UK version of that was at Bacton, which is working reasonably well. We looked at it for Pakefield, Royal Haskonian looked at it for Pakefield and about 22 other sites around the UK. Through the data and the information they've looked at, it won't hold in Pakefield, it won't work here because of its geology, etc. We are looking at it for other sites further north to see if it will work, because there is nothing better than a beach defence, quite frankly. There's nothing better. And that is a fantastic natural defence. So we would have loved it, both Maggie and I would really, fingers and toes crossed, we really wanted to work, the sandscaping to work at Pakefield, because it would have joined up with the nest really well, and we got great hopes for that. But it didn't, as it turned out, it didn't technically work here, it wouldn't hold. And it's even more expensive to put in a sandscaping scheme than it is to put in a rock scheme. So the one up at Bacton, oh gosh, I'm not even going to get, yes I am, it's just over 30 million. The sandscaping scheme here, I think we were looking at somewhere between 20 and 25, whereas a rock defence would be slightly smaller. But groins, no, there isn't a plan to put groins back in here because Natural England have indicated that a natural defence, or a rock defence, would be the one that, because of the way the material moves, the sediment moves, will be the one that is most acceptable. And actually that tallied nicely. We didn't design it that way, but it did tally nicely with what the community told us in those consultations. That was their preferred view too. It just so happened that Natural England liked that as well. So I would refute that. We do listen and we do come out into the community and talk to people. We certainly don't sit there and tap at computers. We're out here regularly monitoring this frontage. If you want to see those monitoring reports, Sue of the Community Steering Group regularly sends around where you can find monitoring reports. That tells you what's happening on the coast, what we've observed and seen through our engineering team. So the information is out there. We don't make decisions that aren't based upon studies, fact and information. We can't do that. We're not allowed to do that. We can't put in anything that is detrimental. So whatever we do on the coast can't be detrimental north and south. So we have to put in something that won't damage other people, other properties and other businesses elsewhere. That we're not allowed to do that. There are a lot of assurance stages we have to go through, not only with those statutory consultees, but with the Environment Agency themselves, who are the strategic overview of the coast. So everything in place has its checks and balances, and all of those checks and balances are open to public scrutiny, because we are open to audit and scrutiny at quite a high level. We can't spend a penny unless we can justify it. So there it is open, honest and transparent, all of that process. And I'd be happy for anybody to access that information.
Can I just say that communication pipe is showing up again, that's all sticking out again.
Oh, is that the cable?
The cable pipe, yeah. That was sorted out a little while ago. That's something, anyway, that's sticking out the water.
Okay, I think we did tell the cable company because somebody else very kindly...
Yeah, that was reported. I thought they actually done it, but obviously when I walked past this morning, I can swim in there sometimes, and that's right out the water.
I think we did tell them, we could tell them again, but beach material comes down.
Yeah, it's not really...
There's a point we've just raised, if you excuse me on this. You are saying a cable's exposed?
Yeah, the communication cable, yeah.
Right. All I'm saying to you is that I was on the beach at low tide a couple of days ago, and there was a piece of scaffold pipe in line with the beacon mast on the green, and that is a piece of scaffold pole which is in the seabed at one end. I can't move it, but it's out at this moment in time, bearing in mind that I am actually paid to be the eyes and ears of the person responsible for the cables, and I report to him when in actual fact I see anything exposed.
Well, there's a lot of people go swimming, you see, that's it.
And I can assure you that I have not seen anything exposed apart from roughly a couple of weeks ago when the beach dropped an enormous amount.
Well, I walked past this morning and the cable's up.
The cable was out?
Yeah, the cable's out.
Where?
At the third lot of steps going down, and the line of there, the cable is sticking out about that much.
The steps by the old fellows?
No, here.
The
third
slope?
lot, not the slope. Go towards the Jollies. That'll be the steps, the car park. If you walk along in that line.
I'm sorry, there are no cables near the Jolly Sailors. There are no cables near the Jolly Sailors. The cable
That's not near the Jolly Sailors. That's on the third set of steps. You go straight down the pipe, the communication pipe, and that's sticking out about that much.
That's probably an actual fact. Is that scaffold pole I saw the other day?
No, it's not. That's a community. I think that's you could be right.
Well, that's just it.
Anyway, I'm just saying.
Sorry. Before we stop for tea, my wife was an active tea yeah, and to finish this off,
if I may, Sharon, the Mott MacDonald report that was published in March this year, very large, in-depth document, which comes up with a proposal for the bigger picture of the defence. As we all know, this is the emergency defences that were put in, and they came up with a final recommendation of what they think it would cost, etc., to go north and south of where we are at the moment. The last page of that document, the recommendation from the consultants was to change the shoreline management plan from no active intervention to allow some form, whether it's managed realignment or even whether it's just to put wording into that document so as that it is clear that they can. Because I've also been liaising with Matt Further in Park holidays, because we as the local community, we need all the support we can get, especially with businesses. And he's indicated to me he would be happy to work with the local community on this, obviously with yourself, Peter, with government, because we're talking a great deal of money. And it's not going to come from the local community. We're not in that position. So I just wanted to be clear about this wording of the shoreline management policy. I know there's caveats that can be brought in, because when it comes to actually then applying to the Marine Management Organisation for licences, we've got to have that wording there that it's permitted.
The wording, so we've met with Matt to discuss that. The wording in the policy around no active intervention says local interventions are acceptable.
So that wouldn't cause a problem with the MMO?
That won't cause a problem. Natural England are your biggest.
Yeah, but I think they've indicated that they're...
Yeah, the MMO are the people that we get the consents for bringing in material and working that anywhere that is below the medium high water mark.
Yeah.
Naturally, the people that say, yes, that's the material, that's the base, it's not going to affect movement of sediment, that type. They're looking at more of the environmental side of things. So it's them that we needed to talk to, and they were reasonably content that, and we've spoken to the Environment Agency.
Yes, yeah.
So they're reasonably content with that.
Right. So that I just wanted to clear that.
The bit we've got to clarify, which won't prevent Matt from doing anything, which we have spoken to him about. So the bit we need to clarify is where it stops. It doesn't make any difference to Matt because it stops at the end of his land.
That's right.
It's just to make sure that there is we're calling it a transition frontage, okay? So that you've got a no active intervention policy to the south of that, but actually the no active intervention policy for that particular unit, when you create another unit,
Yep.
allows for that intervention to happen.
Right.
But that's there already. That's not a massive change needed. It doesn't prevent him from joining forces with you or moving anything forward.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
That's fine.
we can email you.
Just when you said earlier that the SMP isn't going to be...
Well, we're not going to change the
That's fine.
policy from no active intervention.
No.
There isn't a need to do that, and we wouldn't get that through
No.
because there isn't a justification to change that.
Okay.
But it does allow for local intervention, which means that Matt can do something.
Right. Just that we need to try
Yeah.
to...
We spoke to
Jump.
Matt about and this was a while ago, so I don't know, the costs are likely to have increased, but we spoke to him and roughly, I've got 9 million left.
It's, yeah, like if it was before then,
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
9 to
I think it's now 8-point-something million.
Yeah, I think we gave him a sort of circa 9 million for the frontage, for his frontage. I wouldn't want to be held to that simply because I don't know where Rock is in terms of its cost at the moment, but that might be a little bit more than that. He may decide to do a slightly different design. So it'll all come down to what it looks like, the length and width and height, etc. That's
Right, I guess. Right, if we could stop for a quick cup of tea on Glaston. If you could get the tea and return to your seat, that'd be great. And then we can get down to last cutting. Time ticking on, we'll have to put a time limit on these questions. I'm jumping around a bit to a bit of variation and a bit of variety to make your evening, or end your evening. Next question is, with Pakefield Beach increasing in popularity, the need for more amenities is becoming an issue. Beach hut owners are catered for, but what about the general public? Is it a route up to the nearest toilets? It's just one of those things, we lost the toilet on the cliff here, and with the same, it's an awful note, with the beach building up, it is getting popular. The numbers on Pakefield Beach has increased quite considerably in the last 2 or 3 years since COVID. And there isn't a toilet to be seen other than if you own a beach hut, and you can use the one on the seafront just below the
There's one
John.
down by Zach's, isn't there? There's a public toilet there.
Yeah.
Doesn't make it.
Well, as I say, we had that little one, and the next nearest one,
Yeah, it's at the bottom of the choice.
the next nearest one is obviously opposite the spa.
Yes.
If you want to come off the beach and whatever. Peter, let me throw this one over to you. Well,
I guess the one at the spa, because that's been shut for a week.
Oh,
Fed back to town council on that one, which is, total inconvenience.
Is that completely shut down in the London Maple Street?
No, it's, I think, I don't know why, I haven't come Certainly John Pitts would have been here tonight.
Probably there's a lot of funding is down there.
I think the only toilet that is open is the one where you use a roller key, which of course not many people have. It has always been an issue in terms of public conveniences for this end of the beach.
That's one at the end of Pakefield Street.
Yes, it's shut. It's been shut for a week.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh,
And also, if you're on the beach, and let's be realistic, and you've got, sandcastles and kids and that, are you going to trek, 500 yards to a public convenience? There is also the one in Kensington Gardens on the inside and on the main road. However, it is something that we have noticed that was brought to our attention actually during the campaign in May. Local residents, local residents who use them regularly say what is going to happen, and we are hoping that when they have sorted out the new toilets, the refurbished toilets at Zach's, as you mentioned just now, and that is going to be, there will be a changing places toilet, which is excellent, and also there'll be a lift from the top of the pond down. You think how long it is if you want to walk with a buggy or with a wheelchair down onto the beach, you've got to go to the Clay and back again. There is one for the toilets, but they're only for the users of the beach huts below the Jolly Sailors. So at the moment, it's something that we will be pressing for to address. The problem is where? Where do you site the toilets? Or do you bite the bullet and convert the ones down below the Jolly Sailors into open public conveniences? I think that could be an option. Or you could be quite risky and charge for them, which might then deter people from going into vandalising. I think it's a small but significant issue for our beaches.
You want one up near Dean's Beans, up that way, couldn't you really?
Again, we'd have to look at where, but it's on our radar. But of course, it's about cost, it's about demand. Well, there's obviously demand, even just from the people in the room here. Obviously, if you nip into the Jollies and have a drink and use their toilets, but why should you have to pay for a beverage of some sort to go and use toilets? It is an issue, and I guarantee that myself and Louise and Malcolm are already aware of it, and it will be something we'll be talking about in terms of the general use for the public and our offer to tourists. What if we're not offering conveniences to tourists, what are we doing? And if you can't guarantee the one even at Pakefield Street being open, then it's pretty poor.
Not really, because we're running out of dog walking space, and the minute they put dog toilets in there, they'll say, have your dog on a lead.
So where are you talking about?
If you put it this end, we run out of dog walking space for letting your dog off the lead from the end of the thing. You've got to have your dog on the lead. We've only got there to the rocks. If you put public toilets in, you've got to go, we want the dog on the lead, we want
certainly
the dog
not
on the
this
lead.
site. We couldn't go, Harbour Lane, I've looked at it as well, there's no feasible site there. There was a wonderful little toilet block right next to the church. But unfortunately, due to the nature of some of the people who visited it, it basically shut itself down. But no, all joking apart, we can look, we need to talk about it, and if it means going back and looking down the pond, maybe. But the problem with the toilets round the corner from Zach's, they're a short distance away from the beach owners' toilets. So it's a small, but we will take it away and ask some questions about it in terms of what we're offering as a council.
Free poo bags, might I suggest?
Sorry?
Free poo bags for everybody.
What? Free poo bags, was it? Everybody else.
On that point, the piece of land that is owned by, question mark, and I don't think it's local town council, I think it's under the control of East Suffolk Council, is the green adjacent to All Saints Car Park.
Yeah.
I think that's East Suffolk Council land. And that land was taken over and put in the possession of Waverley District Council probably around about 1950, if my memory is correct. And that's when they demolished the properties in Beachstone Place. Therefore, there are facilities relatively close, and what I would strongly suggest, I'm strongly suggesting it, that adjacent to the car park, at the top of the slopes, relatively close to the church, would be an ideal place to construct a replacement for the one that used to be at the end of Saxon Road, now converted to a property. Now that's my suggestion, whether you work with it or not is entirely your affair. I'm trying to balance the requirements for on top, down below, and again, I'm being very polite about it. I have had, because we have had 10 occupants on the beach, and I have had and seen a human expert on the beach.
Right, lovely, thank you.
Can I say something else?
No, Chair, Boyd, lovely, thank you. Lots of lovely.
Yeah. Next one, in the Carlton Cornwall and Pakefield Touch newspaper, newsletter, in 2021, the residents were told that after the flood work was completed, the environment agent would be informed so that residents would benefit when seeking home insurance, as the risk of flooding had been removed. Has this, or will it ever happen? I spoke to the gentleman who raised this question. He tried to renew his insurance and it's gone up quite considerably. And so the flood work, although it's promised that that would alleviate the flooding problem, as far as insurance companies are concerned, hasn't been addressed. That was you, thank you.
What area?
Which
area is it?
On Wick Way.
Old golf course.
Oh, yeah. On the old the Coatley Street.
Okay, so
That's all done by postcode, isn't it, the insurance?
it is, so the work, Old Wick Way was part of the wider Lowestone Flood Risk Management project. That bit was completed. The Environment Agency are a partner of that project, so they know when it's completed. I was employed by the Environment Agency for about 10 years, but I haven't been employed by them for about 9 years, so my knowledge is out of date. But I think their flood maps are updated every 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know where we are in the scale of or where they are, sorry, in the scale of updating their flood maps as to whether Old Wick Way has been updated on the flood map as to having better protection at the moment. What I can do, if it would be helpful, John, is to take that question back, email it to my contact at the Environment Agency, get a response from you and for you, and then get it back to you.
That'd be lovely,
Let
thank you.
that person know. So it could be as simple as the work was completed and it's hit either mid-cycle of an update of the flood map or it's at the end of the cycle. So I don't know the question.
I know somebody who lives up Rectory Road and he had his house insurance increased because he's in the flood area, coastal-wise.
Yeah.
And that's impossible, he lives up on the hill.
Is it done by postcode?
It's in rain.
It is done by postcode, you're quite right. The Environment Agency's flood maps are now available widely on .gov, but on gov.uk, so you can put your postcode in and find out what risk you're at. So it's quite easy to do that, but I know there's a real... We had a fantastic guy that used to work in our funding team called Paul Mackey, some of you might know Paul. He had lots of conversations and a couple of almost stand-up arguments with the insurance industry and also the Environment Agency to try and get some sensible view of insurance and flood maps and how it was done. But I'm not sure, bless him, that he got an enormous way with that because it's a huge argument for change. But I will ask the question and see what answer I can get back for you.
Sharon, can I ask you, getting back into his contact me as well, I think the flood defences down the road, I've been down 3 times when we've had the slight downfalls recently, and there's been no sign of anything. So if the local, we've got that issuance, and there used to be a small group of residents who actually looked after them.
Yes, they did. Yeah, absolutely.
But what is worrying is that, separate from that, last time I spoke to somebody, they still not received their insurance payouts from the original flooding, which that's... But if they don't tell us, this is the problem, I would say this to anybody,
What, from 2015?
Yeah,
God,
yeah, one or two. But if we can certainly, any council can help, but only if we know.
Yeah.
We're not mind readers. Well, we can't be everywhere checking people, although we'd love to be. But we rely on members of the community telling us things and informing us, keeping us abreast of it. It was devastating what happened then. I mean, it was awful, and it happened over and over again. Now touch on wood, those attenuation tanks, great design. They seem to be doing the job. So all credit to that job getting done. But as I say, if they can get in touch with us as well, if they need support in chasing up the insurance companies and challenging them, and even going retrograde, because it's iniquitous if you're paying through the nose and you're being penalised when you shouldn't be.
Thank you. If I could just depending on the response you get from the Environment Agency, if necessary, I can go to the ABI Association, which is sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Next letter was regarding the beach huts in Pakefield. I was wishing to rent a beach hut in Pakefield for my grandchildren. I'm on the waiting list. However, I'm aware that some are now vacant. I heard nothing from the council. I contacted the beach manager who forwarded my inquiry, but no one has been in touch. The local authorities needing more funds. I don't understand why they don't want my money. Apparently there are some vacant ones on the stretch between in Brom up to the Johnny Sailors, have been for a while, and the person has been waiting a good while, and I know others who have been waiting longer. And there seems to be a hold up or whatever on the letting front. I know they're not cheap to let, but they all seem to tick along to some, but there are a load of vacant ones, and there is this waiting and just not knowing what's happening and where these people are, how these people are sitting on the list.
Fine. And also East Coast, you email them, they don't even respond back, there's nothing. You get an acknowledgement, they'll get back to you and then nothing. I mean, that's so rude, that's just unbelievable.
Comments quite simple. Jobs worth sitting there, can't deal with it, quite under the interest.
I thought councils need the money, they're talking about, they've lost over 5,000 from my knowledge of roughly what I know is standing there for the last 2 years, could be even more, but that's £5,000, isn't it? And you just can't believe that they stood there, and I know there's a waiting list, but surely if people don't respond to the waiting list, there must be a time limit, you'd have thought. You couldn't run a business like this, could you? And then someone's willing to give you money, no, you can't do it. I know you'd never get one, but at the end of the day, why aren't they being met? That's my question.
There is an answer.
Well, I said confidence, I know the answer
There is
is.
an answer. There are people who are jobs worse working in organisations that haven't got a clue what the real world is like, and they don't have any worries about not taking money that will pay their wages. I'm sorry, I'm
Well, that is frustrating because obviously councils need money, I would have thought. Surely, if someone say, right, I don't want to jump the queue, but if no one's got to come up, why can't we have a beach up and pay for it? I don't know, I don't understand it.
Is that farm? Are they farmed out to?
No, it's East Coast now, London. There's a chap down who's in charge, Chris's name. I've been down half a dozen times. He emailed on, but
in defence of the officers, East Suffolk Council has severed its ties with Waverley North.
Yeah.
They didn't renew the contract for one reason or another.
Yeah.
We now have a new in-house arrangement with East Suffolk Services Limited.
Yes.
And it may be that in the transition time, one or two things may have been overlooked, but I'll take it away.
Yeah, I know. I'll leave it.
Can I just ask just a quick straw poll, if I may,
Yeah.
Chair? It's been suggested as a possibility that, I don't know if you're familiar with the black tarred beach huts at Walberswick, that where the pretty ones finish, at the slope and where we've got gaps in between the other ones on Pakefield Beach. Would it be objectionable if we built some more like that and made them beach huts as well?
I think that would be lovely, but the problem is, and there is, I'm all for it, I love all the beach huts down there, but we live up here, but there is a big problem, and that is the parking. And we're being proud. I mean, our drive was blocked the other day. If you want to get out, we couldn't have got in our drive or out our drive. They leave the car, the disabled ones are the worst, 3 hours on the bed with the jolly sailors. And they leave it, and traffic wardens wouldn't do anything about it. I've been in touch with the parking people, everything, but basically they said they can't do anything because they've got disabled. She's walking down the slope, smoking a fag, and she's got a disabled sticker on a Jaguar car, right outside her drive. You couldn't get in or out.
Well, in that case, what we need to take away from our...
So I think you have to look at the parking.
Is to look at what's there already and make sure that's being rented out properly.
Yes.
And of course, the Marmite Eastern Edge blue huts, whether you love them or hate them,
yes.
they're not all full either.
No,
So
no.
I think that's another thing we want to chase up and say, you know, we want to offer something for locals and for tourists, and if we're not using our full capacity of beach huts, why aren't we? It's income.
Yeah, it's income. That's a business.
The
Isn't it?
containers are priced here. That's the bottom line of this one.
True.
I thought they were putting them down.
Well, in my world, I understand the price.
They haven't reduced them yet, have they?
No. Well, that's another thing which we will be asking about in due course.
And sticking a shelf in doesn't make it a luxury beach.
I walked past there the other day and the doors were open, I thought, screw my chest.
Can I just a quick comment in there? It took, it was we identified it within our team, it took them a year to work out that if you've got a sloping back on a beach hut, you couldn't put hooks there to hang your towels on. So they eventually put them on the sides. So you end up being silly little things like that. Somewhere along the line, you know,
So you bang your head on them, not like it's an oil.
yeah. So you know, little things like that. We want to focus on that. Talk to people. We want those huts used. We want new toilets all done. We want access to the beach for people who are less able, and that will bring.
And it's lovely what they're going to do now.
So we are on it. It's another one of the things on our list of things to do.
But I just think up here, I think you really got to take in. I know All Saints Road does a free car park, but I think the big issue we have is car park.
You are, yeah.
Well, now
Where I
we're
am, and that's
getting-
the ignorance.
That moves us swiftly on to the last one, actually. Even with the car park at the end of the road, this is also true.
Yeah.
Residents parking their cars around All Saints Road, Gutdale Court, Pakefield Street, and surrounding areas that become increasingly more difficult. Is it now time to introduce residents parking permits in Pakefield?
I think what we could do is do a one-way system would be brilliant.
Yes, I agree. Absolutely.
One way, because there's such a lot of traffic now, especially with the jollies.
And the speeding up
And the speeding, yeah.
I've had 2 dead hedgehogs, a cat, 3 seagulls. This is all in the last 2 months.
Yeah.
Outside my property, which is very
New Pakefield Street.
Yeah,
There's a chap, he goes up and down there.
lunatic.
Well, they
He's
just-
actually got his name on his car. actually.
We're so far. We've actually asked if you could have speed bumps or, I mean, really, that is dangerous.
Absolutely.
They just get off in the joints and the short
I think they use it as a wrap ride.
They do.
So they don't have to go along London Road South. So they come
down.
I think a one-way system would be quite good. Yeah.
So what way? What way do you want to
Well, I think probably what we need is we need a person who can kind of help us with this.
Yeah.
Because I know it's a problem, you know, pulling out the causeway, a number of times I've had a life nearly taken out. And the other day, I was coming out from the barrier at Crackling, so I was in front of the hearse. I'm no kidding you, this Range Rover came down from the Jolly's end so fast. He then saw the hearse. And he didn't move. And I kept walking towards him, and I'm thinking, in a minute he's going to reverse, he's going to realise we're not going backwards. And they did, but They do go so fast down that road. So I think what we need is the right person.
And the parking and everything, we can't even see Sophie to get her drive and come around the bit, we can choose, that's it.
Because obviously on this panel, there isn't the right person to talk about those things. Yeah.
Always,
Yeah.
I'd like to have a one-way 20-mile-an-hour system.
That's brilliant. And that in actual practice, and I'm sorry if I interject, I was going to try and raise that point. South of Kensington Road and to the east of London Road South and London Road Pakefield is screaming out for a 20-mile-an-hour limit, all roads, and where any road has cars parked persistently on one side, and I'm thinking now London Road South particularly, they park half on the pavement, half on the road, in order for there to be enough width of the road. Serious what I'm saying? I'm honestly truthfully saying that we should
5 years
consider.
after time, they park both sides, and that chap still walks up there at 100 miles an hour.
We should consider it, but bear in mind that the planners and the council officers will immediately red flag anything to do with one-way streets, because one-way streets, in their opinion, increase road traffic speeds.
So
I'm
there
just
is,
warning you.
there is a national thing looking at 20 mile speed limits in residential areas anyway.
Yeah.
So, you know, if we can feed into that, that would be really probably helpful. So we probably need to
Yeah, but not on,
make that
not on
another-
London Road. You
I didn't say that on
London
London Road.
These little roads.
I'm sorry, I did not say on London Road, I said south of Kensington Road and the roads bounded by London Road South and London Road Pakefield. That means
That would have
anything
been narrow.
on the cliff side, all the way through, would be a limited speed and where necessary, make enough width by allowing parking one side only and traffic to flow on the other. Now you could work that one out quite sensibly. Kendall Road could do it, Morton Road could do it, Acton Road could do it, they'd all be good.
Yeah.
So there's no reason why this shouldn't be some sort of joint venture between the county councillors and the district councillors. We can't take on highways issues, and the county councillors can't take on parking issues. But residents parking was mentioned in there, just so that you know. Residents can apply for residents parking should they wish, but it has to be done by a survey of the people in the street, and I can't remember.
I think they've done that.
Yeah.
They've done that.
I think they 51%.
There's an uproar, they wouldn't pay. That's the
No, it wasn't paid, it was just
2 years ago, this wasn't it?
no, this was to see if you wanted. Now, parking zones, that's different, but I'm talking about, you know, residents' permits, and so you have to get the agreed majority.
Yeah, they would do it.
But if there are issues, as you talked about now, the traffic's getting worse, parking is getting worse, within the triangle, you know, the bits bounded, you know, the terrace properties, up to Jolly's, down Pakefield Street, down there, it's something that we as district councils can take away, speak to our parking officer about whether there's any way of doing anything about the parking generally.
I think Melanie tried to do that, wasn't that long ago, there was an uproar.
That might have been to do with speeds.
Well, she did, didn't she? Because
Yeah,
I know
we can talk to the county councils and find out where they've got.
Even if we had 20 signs up, maybe.
The only problem with 20 signs is they're not enforceable under law at the moment. They're an advisory, which is a bit daft. But it is a serious issue, particularly in that part of Pakefield. Those narrow terraced roads were never designed for cars.
But the other thing is, we've got those, you know those sandstone with bobbles on, so people know if they're blind or they're in a wheelchair. Like there's one dead opposite the causeway, and people park over it, and they park over it. So if you're in a scooter, you couldn't get through there, you couldn't get, I suppose the bobbles are for blind people, aren't they?
Yeah, but they park all on the road up those.
You can't get this. All we need is a traffic warden up there, maybe every other sneaky, every other way.
I think they should be parking at the top curves anyway.
They should, but they're specifically, they're sandstone colours and they've got bubbles on.
Yeah, but surely there's a drop curb at there as well.
Yeah, and that's for scooters and people, obviously not for blind people, so you know when they're stood on it. But if a traffic warden came up there, unexpectedly every other day, the council will get through more quick.
Yeah,
but they
right.
But then they park on the pavement anyway.
They do.
So don't worry about a drop curve. You look down under those sides.
That brings us nicely to 9 o'clock.
I've just got one more question. What are we doing about the sewage outlet out here?
What sewage outlet? Can I just query?
If you go on SSRS, Safer Seas and River Sewage,
Yes.
we're getting dumped off on average every week from Galston, North Beach and South Beach. And the 10 o'clock swimmers and the 4 o'clock swimmers have asked me to put this question forward because there's a group of ladies that meet at 10, well actually some quick meet at 6, but they're mad. And meet at 10 and meet at 4. And if you go on SSRS, the app, we keep getting South Beach sewage alert. It was that bad. There's one up, that's North Beach, but the South Beach here, we're getting one. I've only had the app probably 3.5 months, and it's averaging once a week now, and it's actually come up with email your MP.
I've done that.
We email your MP because we don't know how long when this is done off. You need to put it all on your phones. It's called SSRS, and I do the watch list, so I know when to swim and when not to swim myself, not to take the dog in, but it's getting worse and worse. And the thing is, it's all right saying there's been an alert, but how do we know when it's clean, ready to go back in again? Does it take 24 hours to clean? Does it 48? Is it 48 hours? But it's averaging now once a week, and it's sewage, and it's people are now reporting illnesses and everything. So who is going to be responsible for that? Who is responsible?
The position is that the vast majority of sewer outlets in around those spots have been cut off, have been blocked off in the last, probably since 2013. There is, as I understand it, one remaining that Anglian Water are assuring me that they will be blocking.
That's clear.
No, there's one at Galston, there's one at North Beach, and there's one at South Beach. Put the SSRS in your phone, and it is the South Beach here, and I know because the dog was ill, I was ill, we went to the doctors, we both ended up on antibiotics. Whether it was that or whether, but there's a massive alert this week. It's not just sewage, it says do not swim, pollution, notify your
Yeah, so hang on,
MP.
can I just clarify? Sewage on the beach, that's not from an outfall on the beach, that's from an outfall that's coming from elsewhere.
No, you need to download the SSRS.
I have the app, it warns me, I often
But there's pollution alert
right,
this
but
week, not
where's
just
it coming
sewage.
from, not where's it ending up?
Well, I don't know, I've only got the app, I'm asking you.
Nicholas, water reviewed it. Just for your information, next Wednesday we have full council. One of the questions from our group is asking for an update on sewage outfall in Lowestoft.
But there's
So
the
we're
alert
getting
now, it doesn't just say sewage, the alert yesterday says pollution.
Yeah, so
what's the difference?
I don't know, because I'm not an expert on pollution and water. What I'm saying is, Anglian Water are the responsible authority. We hope to get an answer next week as to exactly what they've been doing for the past 6 months since we last asked the question. That's so important.
And it hasn't always been after heavy rain, I will say.
It always is.
No, it's not.
Not always.
Well, it has been recently.
Mostly, but occasionally that's when we've had new rain.
Well, we'll get an answer next week with the figures about when we've had the overflows, what they've been caused, whether they low, high tide and so on. And as Peter says, Anglian Water, to some extent, they can't hold your feet to the fire, it's not the right thing to do. But we'll look to account for what they have been doing over the past few years, looking after our waterways. And I think part of it is monitoring them, asking them questions, and that they are, well, they take your money.
Well, they
in your waterways, so we have every right to ask them to be accountable. But we talked about tourism earlier, we don't want to have one incident where we can't let it be going on our beaches. But be assured that we will get some answers back. And I want to
know exactly where they came out.
The Claremont
No, it's three of them.
As far as I understood it, it's tidal based on what's coming down the Wadey. It's coming through lake loading, down the Wadey, from the Broads, from farmland.
Yeah, it's not from farmland.
So Sorry?
It's not from farmland.
So that's different, it is. It's all sorts of stuff, it's chemicals from farmland, it's all flowing into the water system, and part of it is to make sure it's cleaned up before it gets to us. That's what we're on about. I sit on the internal drainage board for the Pakefield Lower Yea. Really exciting. Somebody has to.
But where exactly are the outlets?
They're going into Lake Logan. Into the
It's
river.
coming out of the harbour.
And then they're coming out hard to the beach.
Why does
There's
it
no-
say,
there's no-
why on the SMS does it say North Beach, South
Because
Beach?
it's coming onto the beach from Lake Logan.
No, but there's Dalston, North Beach, South
They're coming
Beach.
down the view of the Yea.
Can I please be allowed a small intervention?
Yeah.
Kirkby Stream, right, the one that caused the problems in Oldwick Way and what have you, and through Carlton, Coldwater Street. Anything from Blunder Street, well, stand up, I have to get my directions. Anything from the south of here, we're talking about Gisland, we're talking about out nearly as far as Ella,
Yeah.
we're talking about Mutford and all of those areas. Any surplus water coming off the fields, carrying anything which could be considered a contaminant, will go into the drainage system and come down the Kirkby Stream, through Carlton, through Oldwick Way, through Pakefield Park, and when all of those floods took place, X years ago when Oldwick Way was the problem, I know what the problem was, but nobody else knew what the problem was, and this was in actual fact accidental, I want to get the right words, accidental, semi-unintentional, what do you call chucking litter away? I mean, cans, wrappers, or whatever. It was rubbish, right? This has accumulated over the years in all of the water courses in between the resorts. We then had some serious rain. It flooded all the crap, took it all the way down to the bottom end of Central Road and blocked up the grid that stops the water and the rubbish getting into the pumps. The pumps, which are situated at the bottom of Durban Road, 3 of them, large in number, all discharge out into the Lake Loading by Asda.
That's right, yeah, I didn't say that.
The pumps themselves never got any water. It all got into Oldwick Way and all the houses. And the reason why is the water couldn't get through the grids, which weren't clean because nobody paid to clean the grids out. But
What's that got to do with the sewage?
I'm sorry, please understand this. You don't know what pollution is. Pollution's the stuff that comes off the fields as well. It's not sewage as we know it from the toilets. It's stuff which actually comes through. The beaches can be polluted with acids. They can be polluted with everything, can't they?
Hi John, just a question before we wrap up the evening. I'd love to talk about sewage more. I don't ask for a response for my question, just a question quickly. Obviously, one of the most important futures of Pakefield is our children. I'm a father to a 2.5-year-old. She was christened by Sharon recently. And I spend far too much in the play park. Far too much time. It's got its problems. I've requested 3 times this year that the grass be cut, which it has. And there's drug paraphernalia in there, which we can't do anything about that. There's dog poo in there, can't do anything about that. However, the only working gate is onto a road. There's a maintenance gate which is onto the pavement, the coastal path, which we've spoken about. However, that's been padlocked for the last 8 months. Also, the pedestrian gate for the children goes onto the road, which is the turning circle from the pub, the Oddfellows. So cars are going up the end of the road, reversing into the gate area where kids are coming, and that gate opens outwards into the road, not inwards into the park. Can I get reassurances that that will be looked into? Because I can see there's investment opportunities with Normanston Park. There's broken equipment down at Tides Reach at the Claremont Pier, which has been broken for about 6 months during the peak season. However, just the access from Pakefield Park is concerning. Will that be looked into in the future before something happens? I just thought I'd take that opportunity just to raise that issue with our young children.
They're all town council parks. We will communicate with the town council.
Thank you very much.